Kim Jong Un is one of the most controversial and enigmatic figures in contemporary global politics. As the leader of North Korea, he has presided over a nation that remains largely isolated from the rest of the world, known for its authoritarian regime, nuclear weapons program, and strict control over its citizens. Born on January 8, 1983, or possibly 1984, Kim Jong Un is the third and youngest son of Kim Jong-il, the country's former leader, and Kim Jong Un, who was said to be one of his father's most trusted consorts. His family lineage places him firmly in the role of the successor to the Kim family's dynastic rule, a position his grandfather, Kim Il-sung, founded in 1948 when he became the first leader of North Korea. Growing up in a secluded and highly secretive environment, Kim Jong Un was kept out of the public eye for much of his early life. His exact date of birth is unclear, and details about his childhood are scarce, as the North Korean regime has been very protective of the leader's privacy. However, it is widely believed that he spent a significant portion of his youth outside North Korea, particularly in Switzerland, where he attended school in the early 1990s. According to some reports, he went by the name Pak Kun while in Switzerland and attended the International School of Bern, a private institution that catered to expatriates. There, Kim Jong Un was said to have been somewhat of a normal student, though his behavior and academic performance varied according to the accounts of those who knew him. His time in Switzerland exposed him to Western culture, though it is uncertain how much of that influence permeated his worldview when he returned to North Korea. After his time in Switzerland, Kim Jong Un returned to North Korea, where he was reportedly groomed for leadership by his father, Kim Jong-il. His elder brothers, Kim Jong-nam and Kim Jong-il, were initially considered more likely heirs to the throne. However, Kim Jong-il reportedly had reservations about their leadership abilities, with Kim Jong-nam falling out of favor after a failed attempt to visit Japan using a fake passport. This left Kim Jong-un, who had been quietly receiving military and political training, as the most viable successor to the North Korean leadership. Kim Jong-un's rise to power was accelerated following the death of his father on December 17, 2011. Kim Jong-il's sudden death left the nation in a state of uncertainty, but the transition to Kim Jong-un's leadership was swift and largely seamless, thanks in part to the structures of the Workers' Party of Korea, the military, and the ruling Kim family's tight control over the nation. Kim Jong-un's succession was supported by key figures in North Korea's leadership, who recognized the importance of maintaining continuity in the country's leadership and ideology. At the time of his ascension, Kim Jong-un was young and relatively inexperienced, which led many outside North Korea to question his ability to lead the country. However, he quickly demonstrated a degree of authority, consolidating power through purges and the elimination of potential rivals. One of his first acts as leader was the execution of his uncle, Jang Song-thaek, who had been a prominent figure in the North Korean leadership and was seen as a potential rival. This brutal act sent a clear message about Kim Jong-un's willingness to use force to secure his hold on power. It was also indicative of the ruthlessness that would characterize much of his leadership style. Kim Jong-un's leadership style has often been described as a continuation of his father's autocratic rule, though with certain personal differences. He has worked to project an image of strength and authority, often appearing in public with military leaders or presiding over large gatherings of the North Korean populace. His leadership has been marked by an emphasis on military power, which he has used as both a tool of domestic control and a means of asserting North Korea's place on the global stage. One of the most striking aspects of his rule has been his development of North Korea's nuclear weapons program, which has become a defining feature of his leadership. Under Kim Jong-un, North Korea has made significant advancements in its nuclear and missile capabilities. The regime has conducted multiple nuclear tests and successfully developed long-range missiles capable of reaching the United States. These advancements have significantly heightened tensions in the region and drawn condemnation from the international community. Kim Jong-un's pursuit of nuclear weapons has been driven by a belief that they are necessary for the survival of the regime. He has often stated that North Korea's nuclear program is a deterrent against perceived threats from the United States and its allies. Despite repeated sanctions and diplomatic efforts to curb North Korea's nuclear ambitions, Kim Jong Un has remained steadfast in his pursuit of these weapons, viewing them as a critical tool of both defense and diplomacy. The development of nuclear weapons has been accompanied by periodic provocations, including missile tests and threats of military action. These actions have led to a series of standoffs with the United States, South Korea, and other nations. While Kim Jong-un's regime has shown an ability to escalate tensions, it has also demonstrated a willingness to engage in diplomacy when it suits its interests. This was most evident in 2018, when Kim Jong-un agreed to meet with U.S. President Donald Trump in a historic summit in Singapore. The summit was a momentous occasion, as it marked the first time a sitting U.S. president had met with a North Korean leader. The two leaders discussed North Korea's nuclear disarmament, though the outcome of the summit was largely inconclusive. Despite the lack of concrete progress, the summit symbolized Kim Jong-un's growing willingness to engage with the outside world, at least when it serves North Korea's interests. The diplomacy between Kim Jong-un and Trump continued into 2019 with a second summit in Hanoi, Vietnam. However, this summit ended abruptly, with both sides failing to reach an agreement. While the talks were seen as a potential breakthrough, they ultimately highlighted the fundamental differences between the two sides, particularly over the issue of sanctions relief and the pace of denuclearization. Kim Jong-un's insistence on maintaining North Korea's nuclear capabilities, coupled with the United States' reluctance to ease sanctions without concrete steps toward disarmament, led to the collapse of the talks. In addition to his nuclear pursuits, Kim Jong-un has sought to bolster his legitimacy within North Korea by promoting a policy of economic development. While the country remains one of the poorest and most isolated in the world, Kim Jong-un has overseen efforts to modernize the economy, focusing on agriculture, infrastructure, and industry. He has also attempted to attract foreign investment, particularly from China, though the country's ongoing international isolation and the strict sanctions regime have hampered his efforts. Despite his attempts to improve North Korea's economy, the country remains heavily dependent on China for trade and aid. The relationship between North Korea and China is complex, with China serving as both an economic lifeline and a key diplomatic partner. However, Kim Jong-un's relationship with China has at times been fraught with tension, particularly when North Korea has conducted nuclear tests or engaged in provocative actions. China has supported many of the United Nations Security Council sanctions against North Korea, but it has also called for dialogue and negotiation, sometimes acting as a mediator between North Korea and the United States. Kim Jong-un's leadership has been marked by his ability to maintain control over North Korea's highly regimented society. The regime enforces strict ideological control over its citizens, with a heavy emphasis on loyalty to the Kim family and the state's ideology, known as Juche, or self-reliance. The government controls all aspects of life, including the economy, the media, and even personal relationships. Citizens are subject to constant surveillance, and dissent is punished harshly. The regime has been accused of widespread human rights abuses, including the use of forced labor camps, executions, and torture. Despite these abuses, Kim Jong-un has been able to maintain a degree of stability within the country, in part by controlling information and projecting an image of strength. Internally, Kim Jong-un has faced challenges from within the ruling elite, but he has been able to neutralize many potential rivals. The purges of high-ranking officials, including his uncle Jang Song-thaek, are a testament to his willingness to use force to maintain his grip on power. However, despite his ruthless consolidation of power, Kim Jong-un has also sought to present himself as a man of the people. He has appeared in public on numerous occasions, often meeting with workers, farmers, and military personnel. These public appearances are carefully staged to reinforce his image as a leader who is in touch with the everyday lives of North Koreans. In the realm of international relations, Kim Jong-un's leadership has been defined by a delicate balancing act. On one hand, he has pursued a policy of self-reliance and military strength, emphasizing North Korea's sovereignty and independence. On the other hand, he has sought to engage in diplomacy with both the United States and other countries, as evidenced by his summits with Donald Trump and his outreach to South Korea. His approach to international relations is driven by a desire to ensure the survival of his regime and to secure economic aid and investment. At the same time, Kim Jong Un is also aware of the need to project strength and maintain the loyalty of his military and the North Korean people. Despite the international focus on his nuclear program, Kim Jong Un has made efforts to cultivate a more favorable image abroad. His diplomatic outreach, particularly to South Korea and the United States, is seen as an attempt to break North Korea's international isolation and improve its economic prospects. However, these efforts have been met with skepticism, both domestically and internationally. Many analysts question whether Kim Jong Un is truly committed to denuclearization or if his overtures are simply a way to buy time and gain concessions from the international community. Kim Jong Un's legacy is still being written, and it is difficult to predict what the future holds for him and for North Korea. His leadership has been characterized by unpredictability and a willingness to take bold actions, both domestically and internationally. While his nuclear ambitions have brought North Korea to the forefront of global politics, they have also isolated the country and drawn widespread condemnation. At the same time, his efforts to modernize the economy and engage in diplomacy suggest that he may be more pragmatic than his predecessors. Ultimately, Kim Jong Un's future will depend on his ability to maintain control over North Korea, navigate the complex international landscape, and balance the demands of his regime with the pressures of an increasingly interconnected world.